Hello and welcome back to another lesson of Lindsay Setchell's It's Not Rocket Science when it comes to horse and hoof care. And today we're going to talk about the toe callus. That funny little ridge that appears on the tip of the sole right up at the front there near the toe wall, and we call it a toe callus. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about something called a retracted sole. Retracted sole. We like to come up with these fancy words when we're talking about horses, very much so when we talk about horses. And this is just another one. And in actual fact, what does retracted mean? It kind of means pull back, doesn't it? So another word you could use is a sunken sole. But really, retracted soles don't exist. So there's going to be a lot of gasps from a lot of people who are watching this now, because they'll be like, of course they do. I've been taught that they exist. It's there. It's a real thing. I've seen it. Well, I'm going to show you now that actually that is a consequence of unnatural hoof care practices is what you're seeing, and you're imagining that it's one thing when in actual fact it's something else. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's rub off my rocket. It's not rocket science, and we'll keep this area here so that we can remember what it is that we're talking about. So let's first of all talk about the toe callus. So this time we're going to have to put a foot upside down. So this is our foot here. These are our heel bulbs. That's the toe going up into the pastern, going like this, and we have our coronary band going like that. So that's pretty much, sorry again about my drawings, and that pretty much is what the foot looks like if you turn it upside down. Now, just as an aside here, whenever we're talking about horses' hooves, and whenever a professional comes to talk to you about horses' hooves, and I've spoken to you about this before, about them looking down at the foot, never ever judge what is going on with the horse's foot from above. You need to pick it up and you need to look at it from below. You need to look at where the wall is. You need to look at where the sole is, the frog, bars, the heels, everything to do with that horse's footprint on the ground has to be looked at from below. Now, no matter whether it looks like it's got a long toe from above, you must never ever do that or judge it. Always pick it up and look at it from below. All right, so this would be, we just put a little bit of a Mustang roll on there. This would be, this point here would be the point that the horse walks on. This is the water line, or also known as the inner hoof wall. And that's the structure that Mother Nature put in place. It's the strongest structure in the hoof wall that is there for the horse to walk on. Now, the horse has pillars of support. All animals that have feet have pillars of support. Those pillars of support are the areas in their foot that are always in contact with the ground. We call these active wear areas, these pillars of support, and they're always there. They don't wear away. They're always there on the ground all the time. So this here is a pillar of support. So you have this area here, and you also have the heels. The heels have to be balanced from side to side, and they also have to be balanced from the heel through to the toe. And that's really, really important. That's how Mother Nature designed the foot, and so that's very important. And then we have what we call the maximum amount of surface area. So this is the surface area. This part of the surface area is so important to the horse because far too many horses that we see, and it's a huge amount of horses we see, have a very reduced surface area because their heels have been allowed to underrun or be longer, and longer with the way the horn tubules grow, that means underrun, and their toes have been removed. So you're reducing that surface area, and that's a bad thing for a horse. But because the world is so obsessed with lever forces, mechanical tearing of the lamina, which we've proven time and time again doesn't actually happen, and breakover, then they get so obsessed with these things that they feel that they need to shorten that capsule and make it smaller and smaller and smaller. And in actual fact, it's a really bad thing to do to a horse. Okay, so let's move on. So let's just take out the surface area a little bit. So what we have is this is a normal foot, and it's balanced from heel to toe. Now, there are an awful lot of people on the internet right now who are talking about measurements, and measurements from the pedal bone, measurements from the apex of the frog, and where you should have those measurements and how long it should be. And we have a really big thing in HM about measurements and angles and trying to make distorted hoof capsules, which, let's face it, we come across an awful lot of them in the equine world that are suffering from diet and management issues. And we have a real problem with people who come along and they go, this is the way it should be, and that we need to cut the foot and shape the foot to sit within these certain angles. Well, that'd be great if every single foot was healthy. And every single foot that's healthy will naturally find the right angles for that horse. And so it happens that the angles are correct for that horse. But the problem that we have is that unnatural hoof care practices interfere. And when you're putting shoes on a horse and you're ignoring active wear points, you're obliterating them completely, and you're turning active wear points on their head, and then you're shortening toes and you're allowing heels to underrun, you can't possibly achieve the natural normal angles that that horse needs. The only way that you can find the right angles for that horse is, of course, following a constant. And the only constant in the horse that you need to follow when you're doing trimming, of course, is the hard sole plane. And we've talked about that so many times. And in this lesson, we'll talk a little bit more about it. So let's carry on. So here we are, we have this balanced foot. But what happens nowadays with this obsession with angles, obsession with lengths, is that instead of allowing the horse to have his toe on the ground here, what happens is this is cut back. This is cut back. So this little area here that was on the ground has completely gone. It's not there anymore. Now that's a big problem for the horse because the horse has these pillars of support. And those are there, like I said, in every single foot. But you have just removed the pillar of support now. So the only option that the horse has got is to produce a toe callus, and they produce it just here, just back from where the hoof has been cut back to. But this toe callus appears, and it doesn't appear straight away, incidentally. If a horse has just had this done to them, then that toe callus has to grow to be there. Now, why is it there? What is a toe callus? This here. Why is that toe callus there? The toe callus is there because the horse's foot has been harmed. This has been removed, this area here. And so the horse has no option but to put out another layer of protection. This sole callus here is made out of sole material. Now, sole material was never ever meant to be a material that the horse walked around on all the time. It just wasn't meant to be that. It is made up slightly differently. Sure, it's made up of horn, but the horn isn't the same structure as the horn that is coming down from on the hoof wall, and particularly the inner hoof wall. It's such an interwoven matrix of keratin that it becomes incredibly strong and also actually flexible too, because it has a higher water content than the very outer hoof wall. And that is what Mother Nature designed for the horse to walk on. So that's been removed. The thing that Mother Nature said, you better leave that in place, has gone, because the human goes, we don't need it, because we're obsessed with angles and measurements, and we feel that it needs to be back. The human thinks that, not the horse, the human. So that's gone. So we've created this toe callus here. Now, generally what happens when the toe callus is created is that also the heels are allowed to underrun. So here we have heels that have underrun. And we've got this toe callus that's getting bigger and bigger here. And people celebrate the toe callus. Oh yes, it's great, it's there. That just shows that the horse's foot is going to heal, it's going to aid in healing. No, the reason that it's there is because you removed this bit here, the horse's natural pillar of support. You took it away, and now the horse is having to protect itself and put in a toe callus. Now it's not rocket science, right? The foot is going to protect itself, it's going to try and protect P3, and therefore that's why we see these toe calluses. So if you see a big ridge, a big toe callus, your hoof wall isn't in play anymore. So that's the toe callus. Thank you very much, we've done that. Now let's have a look at the retracted sole. Now the retracted sole, or the sunken sole, is taught in various hoof schools as the sole sinking down. Sort of almost like it's been vacuum packed, that the sole has had everything sucked out of it, it's gone and sucked right back up to the bottom of the pedal bone. So this is what they believe. And I'll put a picture up right now up here, which is an example that somebody put up on our page to say, there you go, that's a toe callus. It's not a real toe callus. What you're seeing there is a retracted sole. So what they're saying is that this isn't a toe callus, and that what's actually happened is that the sole has sunken down. It's retracted. It's gone that way. That's what they're thinking. And this is just the real part of the foot that should be there. And in fact, that's what it should be. This is what it should be, but the sole has sunken back. It has retracted. Well, that's not what's happened at all. Because as you can see from this picture here, there is far too much heel, the heels have underrun, and there's far too much bar, which is all above the hard sole plane. This is above the hard sole plane, the callus, because it's been formed there, for the horse has formed it to try and protect itself. So this here actually is where the sole should be. And the appearance of this sunken down sole is only there because everything else shouldn't be there. And it gives the eye the impression that the sole has sunken back. Because these are people who do not trim to Mother Nature's constants, the hard sole plane. These are people who employ PPT, personal preference trimming. That's what this is all about. So let's just look at this in a little bit more detail. Let's just remove this here. I'm going to leave that so you can see that there. Let's leave hard sole plane. And we're going to see if we can draw the bottom of the foot. Here we go. And then we've got the bars here. And here are the heels. And here is the toe. And when you're balancing a foot, you always need to obviously balance from heel to heel. That's really important. And the bulbs and the frog and everything else can get in the way and set your eye off. So it becomes a skill. You have to learn how to do it and ignore all of that that's in your eye line. And then you also have to balance to the toe. And you don't want any high spots anywhere. You're balancing to the toe, actually to the horse's natural pillar of support. That is their active wear, their pillar of support. So that's how you balance a foot. But you can't do that correctly unless you actually find the hard sole plane. So let's talk about that toe callus again. Now, what they're doing is they're removing the hoof wall here. So let's just take it off because that's what they've removed. Okay, so now we don't have hoof wall in play anymore. We don't have this in play because it's just been removed. So what the horse is doing is producing a callus part of its toe here, made out of sole. And there's your callus. They can be of different sizes, but that's your callus there. This is your toe callus. And its presence there, this high ridge, is telling you that its pillar of support has been taken away. Now, when we have laminitic feet, very, very distorted feet, that you know, you've seen them on HM, and you've seen the hoof wall actually goes out like this. And we're saying to you, you mustn't remove that because the horse still feels it has its pillar of support there. That's where it's feeding back to. That's the feedback mechanism that's making that hoof, all the growth rate, all grow together in equilibrium. But when we remove all of this, the horse has no option but to create this toe callus. And also, while it's creating this toe callus, something else happens. You can't see how bad your horse's foot is. You can't see how bad the laminitis is. And so therefore, it could have a massive great wedge, but you're under the impression that your horse has got a nice, neat looking little foot with this toe callus here. And over time, with some laminitic horses, this area just begins to compact. It gets more and more shortened. The heels come further and further forward. And then what they're rocking around on is just this tiny little block with very high heels and the toes that have been brought right back. There's not enough length at the toe, and therefore P3 is in dire danger of having osteonecrosis. So let's go back to this toe callus. Let's go back to what is happening here. So here we have the toe callus because the hoof wall has been removed. It's trying to protect itself. the foot has been harmed. People will go, oh yeah, it's great, it's healing, you know, the toe callus, whoa. It's not. This is its response to harm. That's what the horse is doing. The toe callus is the response to harm. Now let's go on to this retracted sole situation here. And let's put that picture back up. Now what you're seeing there is, instead of the heels being brought back down to the hard sole plane, the heels are far too far forward. They are above the hard sole plane. They are therefore forward. They've grown that way because that's the way the horn tubules grow. And in some instances, they're allowed to grow quite a way forward. And then you've got quite a bit of bar material all around here. So in between all of that, now we've got this doing this, we've got the hoof wall coming around. We actually only now have, and this toe callus is quite big. Let's just put that back in there now. We actually now have this area around here, this hatched area around here. That's the only bit of sole that we can see now. And it doesn't look like it's at the same height as everything else, because this is the height of the underrun heel. This is the toe sole callus, and everything else underneath looks like it has sunken down. And that is this here. And they think that that is a retracted sole. Where exactly has it retracted to? Where do they think that has gone? The dermis of the bottom of the pedal bone is tiny. And in there we have papillae and a huge network of capillaries. This vast plexus feeds the papillae that's creating the horn that creates the sole. Now, sure, we can have thin soles on horses. And usually the thinnest soles on horses are the ones that are very sick, that are very laminitic, that have those hooves that look classically wide and classically flat. Those are the ones that have the very thin soles. Usually ponies don't have thin soles at the back, they're too compacted, but what they do have is not enough material at the front. This is all the nuances of what happens with distorted hooves. But this whole retracted sole is just kind of messing with your eye. Because you believe that this is in the right place here and here, that the heel is in the right place even though it's underrun and above the HSP, and that this is in the right place, this toe callus, which will be different in different horses. You've got nothing to balance to, let's talk about that in a moment. But because you believe those are in the right place, you see this and go, it's a retracted sole, it's sunken, it's gone down, it's like you vacuum packed it, because that's the image that it's given. However, you come along and you trim back down to the hard sole plane where it needs to be, and suddenly that retracted sole doesn't exist anymore. Sure, we've still got a toe callus, and it's really important with a horse that has lost its toe because it's been removed. You can't just go along and just rasp that toe callus off, because if you did that, you would make that horse lame. You would make that horse footsore, because he needs it. It's his pillar of support, because they need their natural pillars of support. And if you've taken it away, they're going to have to put one in. We've shortened the surface area when we allow heels to underrun, and we allow this toe callus to happen because we've removed the toe. So we've shortened the surface area, we've reduced the length of the toe, we've now got an arbitrary point to balance to. So now when we get our heels out, we're like, do we balance to the top of this toe callus? Because actually, is that now higher than where it should have been? Where are we actually balancing to now? And so the problem with that is that hoof care professionals get confused. Now we have a pathological foot because we have messed around with it. And so now we start over thinning and misunderstanding what's going on here. Some people will rasp it off. Some people leave it and celebrate that it's there. But the reason it's there was because they took the toe off in the first place, causing the horse to have a harmed foot. So that's retracted soles. So in actual fact, if you just do as Mother Nature says and not mess around with the foot and not suppose things are happening and make assumptions, these are things that the toe callus shouldn't be there, and the retracted sole isn't a retracted sole. It's all because of unnatural hoof care practices. So if you actually take these heels, and you bring them back to where Mother Nature suggests, which is way back here at the heart sole plane, and you take the bars down to the heart sole plane and you remove all the excess bar material, you suddenly find out that you don't have a retracted sole, but what you do have is a massive toe callus. And this horse, by the way, these horses that walk around with these toe calluses are never completely sound. You might be told that they're sound, but they're never completely sound. And soundness is something that's quite interesting to me, because I will often go and see a horse which is definitely not sound, and yet its owner still believes it's sound. In the trainer might even still believe it's sound. There's been research, which I think I've mentioned before, where they've taken horses and looked at the soundness, and the trainers and the owners have said, yes, these are sound horses, and the research has gone, oh, they're not sound. You just think that they look sound because you've got used to it. So these are not sound horses. They couldn't possibly be, because they're not walking around on what Mother Nature gave them. So what should you do? You should leave this toe to grow down. No matter whether there is stretch there or not, you should leave the toe to grow down, because we're rehabbing these horses, right? We're trying to get them to have the right foot with all the right natural angles. And the only way you can do that is respecting that hard sole plane, because that will tell you exactly where you need to go. Now, there are also some people out there which will say to you, it's a really bad idea to trim to the HSP at the back of the foot because you have caudal hoof failure, that's back of the foot failure, in so many horses. Oh yeah, so many horses have atrophied frogs, they have weak digital cushions. Do you know what that's a consequence of? Unnatural hoof care and unnatural diet and management. So what you need to do is you need to fix the diet and the management, and those horses with that caudal failure will start to toughen up at the back of the foot. They will, if you get it right. If you just stick another shoe on, or you allow the heels to grow up and grow under, then you're not fixing the problem, because the back of the foot is still having issues. But that's for a whole different lesson. Maybe we'll do a lesson on caudal hoof failure again. Okay, so I hope that's kind of fixed the myth about retracted soles, and also what happens with a toe callus and why it appears. I hope you enjoyed that lesson. Tune in for another lesson of Lindsay's It's Not Rocket Science soon. See you then. Bye-bye.